David, speaking more widely than Tesco in this particular case, I mean, is this actually true? I mean, are people here and abroad really signed up to all this? Are they overjoyed to be charged for a shopping bag?
It depends, I think, is the answer. We've just spent a lot of time, Tesco just spent a lot of time talking to customers across the world, actually, in the businesses that we work in. And I mean, I do agree with what Richard's just said, but customers tell us three things more than anything else. First of all, I thought this one was interesting, that across the world, they do believe that climate change is happening and that it's a problem. And I think that is an optimistic finding that goes against some of the more sceptical findings that we tend to see in the media. The interesting sort of sub-point within that is that they don't, however, get that understanding from governments or from business in the way that we might think they do. Actually, the main reason that consumers around the world give for believing that climate change is happening and is a problem are changes that they observe themselves in the weather, whether it's in their own country or what they see on the news. And I think there is a big responsibility on businesses and on governments to get that whole issue of how consumers understand what's happening on climate change, where the problems are, where the hotspots are, what can be done, much higher up the agenda. In this country, when they were polled in 2007, 6% of the public said they heard too little about climate change, and now that percentage in the UK has gone up to 66%. People say we just don't hear enough about this. The second thing that consumers tell us, again, across the world, and it bears out what Richard was just saying, if there's one barrier to why people don't buy more green products or do more green things, it's the barrier of price. It is still very much the case that the green option, whether it's a carrier bag or whether it's your utilities, your electricity, your gas, or a green car, they tend to cost more, or at least there's a perception that they cost more. So the one thing that we can all get after, in addition to innovation that my colleagues have been talking about, is bringing down the price of the green option, so that it's not just, as Richard was saying, exciting, mainstream, but is actually affordable, particularly in this climate.
Harriet, this is the issue, isn't it? I mean, fair trade products are more expensive. They're bound to be more expensive if you're giving the farmers at the other end of the supply chain a better deal.
Yes,
and we're going through what we're going through economically.
Well, increasingly what the public say they want is that they actually expect business to play their part in tackling environmental problems and tackling poverty. So they are actually looking to business to sort it out, if you like. And globally, again, something like 80% of the public say that they look to business to play their part in tackling the big issues of the day. And so they would expect business increasingly to pay a fair price back to the farmers and workers. And that's absolutely critical if you're going to tackle poverty overseas, which is up there on the public's list. As Richard was saying, the public care more than I think we ever give them credit for. They also care, of course, in time of recession, equally about poverty at home. But they care about poverty overseas too, and they expect companies to pay the fair price. It's absolutely true then, what are the barriers to them buying more fair trade is absolutely price is one of them, but it's not the only one. And I think David's right, sometimes it's a perception. Because if you buy Cadbury Dairy Milk or if you buy fair trade coffee in Marks and Spencer's, it's not going to cost you a penny more. The company have absorbed that extra cost themselves. They've said, we'll pay the extra to the farmers and workers and we won't pass it on to the consumer, exactly in order to make the sustainable option available to the widest possible audience. I think there's still a problem there about the extent to which we devalue consistently our food and drink. The more we offer, buy one bunch of bananas, get one free, the more we drive down the price, in particular of bananas, which is always, the big battleground along with milk to get people into the supermarkets. I think we are enabling people to get used to incredibly cheap products that sometimes are below the cost of production. So I think there is a challenge to us all there about how we square that circle. I would, though, say there's another major barrier to sustainability that the public say, which is availability. And in availability, sometimes they mean I can't find it when I go into the stores, but sometimes they actually mean my favourite brand's not doing it. actually, I really, really want to buy Cadbury Dairy Milk and I want to buy Fairtrade, and I don't like having to choose. So when Cadbury Dairy Milk goes Fairtrade, then it hits the buttons for me. And so I think that goes, if you like, back to your earlier question. Really, this is still very much at the early days of the leadership companies setting the pace, and we haven't yet got it to the scale where every member of the public, wherever they're shopping, whoever their favourite brand is, can choose a sustainable option.
But on the question of price as opposed to availability, how long can you expect companies, even companies with the resources of represented up here on the panel, to absorb the costs of giving the farmers a better deal at one end while still keeping prices as low as they are? It's one of the great achievements, isn't it, of the whole retail industry over the last 30 or 40 years, what it's done in terms of keep holding down the prices of food. You know, how long is that in itself, excuse the pun, sustainable?
I would say the opposite. I would say, how long can you go on not paying a sustainable price to the farmers and still expect them to grow the products that you want them to buy? And at the end of the day, that was one of the killer reasons for Cadbury's, was when we went to visit the cocoa farmers, and they did some research, Cadbury's, and discovered the average age of a cocoa farmer in Ghana is 56. And they came with the slogan, no beans, no bars. If we don't enable people to see a future in farming, they won't be there farming, growing the products that you need to buy in order to make the products. So the sustainable argument, even from a business perspective, is about investing back in the supply chain so that the farmers and workers see a future in agriculture, see a future in production, and will go on growing the products. So I think the argument's almost the reverse, and actually in some cases, industries are waking up almost too late. I mean, it's going to be a battle now to address some of these problems in some of the big commodities, to make sure that farmers do see a future in growing cocoa, in growing cotton, in growing coffee or tea, so that companies have the products they need.